Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Leaving Nothing Undared, a podcast from Oblate School of Theology's Department of Continuing Education, where we engage in insightful conversations with thought leaders and change makers in our faith. My name is Antonio Fritzi. I'm the Director of Continuing Education here at Oblate School of Theology, and I'm joined today by a special guest, Diana Marin. Now, Diana is the Program Manager for Young Adult Mobilization at Catholic Climate Covenant, and she's joining me today to discuss a bit about her upcoming workshop series, WholeMakers, Empowering Leaders for Care of Creation. Let's dive in. Diana, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
I'm so glad to be here, Antonio. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. So we asked you to join us in part because the upcoming offering we're collaborating on, WholeMakers, is generating some interest, and we wanted to offer our audience the opportunity to get to know you a little better and to hear a bit more about the program. So can you begin by giving us a kind of overview of what participants might expect from WholeMakers, or what the big vision is behind this offering?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm so excited to be offering WholeMakers with Albert School of Theology. WholeMakers is an integral ecology curriculum that was developed about 2 years ago by young adults, by a group of young adults who came together during pandemic and said, we want to create an offering that does something towards climate action. What can we do? And they decided to create a curriculum. They wanted this curriculum to educate and also mobilize.
Hmm.
So it is a resource to learn more about climate action, to learn about how our faith directs us towards action, and to mobilize, to get to be in community with other young adults who really care about this issue, who want to learn more, and who want to take action around it in their own like local communities in the way that see fit. So
Hmm.
this uh, program has for OST has been modified to get the fruit of what is normally a 10-week, 10-session program. We're condensing it down into three sessions over the course of November for about an hour long. And we're going to just dive deep and get the best of WholeMakers. We're going to be looking at, I wrote my notes because I wanted to make sure I get the names of this right, understanding the spiritual implications of climate change, of the climate crisis. So that's like our eco theology, just looking like, what does it mean that we're in this crisis right now? We're aware of it. Many of us are sort of seeing the realities of it. I'm here in California. We just had an incredible heat wave, unprecedented, um, and this is those types of weather events are true for many folks across the country, right? So we know that this is an issue. uh what are the implications of it on ourselves spiritually, and what's the impact of it on our church?
Hmm.
That'll be our first session, and that'll be our grounding. Then our second session will be a sort of climate science 101. We're going to look at what what does it mean when we say that global emissions are increasing, that how does that impact the atmosphere, uh, what's the science behind it. We're going to take like a very rudimentary look um, uh, at the climate crisis, and look at it specifically through the lens of the atmospheric science, so looking at the air. You don't need to be a science major. It'll be very uh, accessible. That's the goal. We want to be able to just sort of showcase what the crisis is, so that folks have a better understanding of the science behind what's happening, but also to give that overview. And then our last session is going to be about activism. So I mentioned this is a community-oriented program. Um, in order to mobilize, we do so in relationships. That's core. Um, we're not, sort of living in silos, and our activism and our faith likewise can't be done in silos. We have to do this in relationship with other people. So in this last course especially, we're going to look at what does our faith tell us about action, about being in a justice oriented way in the world. And so there'll be some reflection, um, some prayer, community sharing. I mean, that'll be woven throughout. But in this session particularly, we're going to look at what does the Catholic faith have to say about our what we do in the world, about our actions in the world.
Hmm. Yeah, that's incredible. And to think that this is a curriculum that was developed by young Catholics, kind of just being attentive to what they see as affecting their communities, their church, right? I think when we get into discussions of climate change, it can get very political very quickly. Whereas it seems like this program is taking a very faith-informed approach and community-informed approach to organizing ourselves to understand the situation we're in and identify how our faith leads us to take action. So I want to spend a moment and highlight that connection between our faith and what we do in the world, what we choose to participate in and devote our energies to. So could you speak to, because I know you've been in Catholic organizing for some time now, could you speak to why you think it's important that we connect faith with action generally, and then particularly climate action, and why that's so important for young adults, young Catholic, young people of conscience today?
I think two things. To be a person of faith means to have hope. And that orientation, I think, is so important in the world. And it's a hope that sort of goes beyond a like an emotional one. Like it's not a hope that's sort of like out there. It's a hope that's embodied. And I think our faith, and especially our Catholic tradition, gives us a lot of tools about how to develop hope and how to have hope be a skill set. Um, Something that you can latch onto even when you're maybe not feeling hopeful, but you can still like, you know, move in the direction of hope and be a person of hope. I think that our saints, our tradition, our holy people point to a type of hope that reminds us of God's love, of Jesus's life, um, and can point to what it means for us to have hope in our day and age, in our location, in our like in the like most in like the municipal way, but in like the ways that in which we are located, you know, where we are uniquely located. So faith, I think, gives us tools for hope, and that hope can be expressed outwardly. And I think that's the like call uh of yeah, of our faith. I have a friend who also works in the climate space who talks about uh, our faith being one of resurrection, that we are a people of resurrection. And that means that we go into the dark and we are like familiar with death, but we don't stay there. We're people of resurrection. And so we know that there is life that follows death. We know that there's hope in the midst of darkness. Um, and we need that. I mean, and I think we're going to talk about this. It'll come up in our first session on the spiritual implications of the climate crisis, but these are dark times. The climate crisis is one of many uh, conjoined crises that we're living through. It's a hard time um, to grapple with all of the death and destruction that we're seeing. And I think we see it even more present, and uh, it's just more at our fingertips, like through social media, through like the internet. We're so aware of the many places and peoples that are uh, in harm and in facing violence and death and destruction. Um, and I think like how do we navigate that as a people? I think our faith gives us tools to be able to take stock of what's happening in the world and give us a path forward to understand and like metabolize what's happening, not shy away from it, and also to like move forward in hope with like a sense of purpose, a sense of like renewed faith, and gives us a group of people who we could be in community with in order to address those justice issues, and to be able to move forward with in a sense of pointing to God's love, and with a sense of like solidarity and justice. So yeah, I think that this work feels so powerful to be done in a faith community, because we can touch upon something larger that's moving us to do the work of climate action. That it's also care of creation, that we're caring for life, and we're giving life, we're renewing life, in the work of being climate advocates and finding our way through the climate crisis.
Hmm. It's a really beautiful model of relationship to God, I think, that's being communicated through this curriculum, through how we put together this abbreviated program of 3 sessions. One of the things that you point out that I can say I haven't really heard before, is this idea of hope as something that we are called to do, right? Hope as a verb, hope as an action, hope, in fact, as a skill set, I think you pointed out, right? A set of actions that we can draw on, to navigate what you've acknowledged is an increasingly complex and interrelated situation that we find ourselves in. So I think it's perhaps a little biased of me to note, but it makes sense, right? That when confronting a challenge that seems to be beyond the capacities of any of us as individuals to comprehend, let alone impact, we might turn to that deepest part of ourselves that identifies with that being who can do something, uh, God, right, about this situation, and acknowledging that God does those things through us and through what we choose to engage in with one another, the kind of work we choose to do together and cooperate toward. But that image of tools or strategies is so important, to what you've been articulating and then to the curriculum of the program. So I'm hoping that you'll speak a little bit to what exactly these tools, these strategies, that we seek to share with participants might be, and how they can help them feel empowered, to be that difference, God's difference in the world.
One of the frameworks that we'll touch upon really briefly, is integral ecology. It's a framework that's uplifted by Pope Francis in his encyclical Laudato Si, but that you touched upon already. It's this idea that we're deeply interconnected, that our lives are wound up on by one another's, and also that our Earth is affected by our choices as peoples, and also by that this climate crisis is interrelated with other crises. So that spiritual framework is one that we'll touch upon. We're also going to look at environmental justice. I think it's so important that as we talk about the climate crisis, we also recognize its impacts, and that we especially highlight those who are most impacted by the climate crisis. So taking a look at environmental justice tools that can help us keep track of and learn about places where there has been ecological destruction in our own communities, nationally and globally. So we'll look at a tool that'll help us understand that. We're also going to delve into some Catholic social teaching. So we'll look at like, what does our Catholic faith have to say about, and our tradition have to say about being advocates of justice in the world. And we'll look at a framework, the pastoral circle of the See, Judge, Act model, which is a prayerful tool that I think is so helpful because you can apply it to this situation. You can apply it to like really like most situations, um, to understand an issue. Maybe it's a question that you're holding in your life. You could do it individually. You can also do it in a group. How to see it, what action to take, what discernment to take. That's the judge part, and the action. So, what has changed? How have you changed? What needs to be changed as a result of this prayer in this study? So we'll end the third session with that framework.
And I think, one thing that bears mentioning, right? You very helpfully explicated that see, judge, act model. And you'll note the 3 sessions of this workshop, this offering, follow that kind of progression, right? It's this seeing of coming to an understanding of the situation, judging in communion with the saints and the people of our tradition, right? What models exist, what pathways of relationship with creation exist in our tradition that we might look to, and then really discerning how are we going to work with one another going forward in the light of this discernment we've engaged in, right, together, and how our communities can organize. So these 3 sessions, in addition to conveying the See Judge Act model, are very much informed and shaped by it. But I want to shift our focus just a little bit, because while we're drawing on elements of the Catholic tradition, I think it's important to point out that this experience or this workshop is also very much informed by your own background and influences and your work in organizing for climate action, work you've done, I know, with the nuns and nuns together as a liaison. So I'm curious if you can speak a little bit to how your previous work has influenced your approach to climate activism, and particularly the faith dimension of how that's impacted your work.
Yeah, totally. It has been such a really prayerful and beautiful journey. And maybe this was just as I was starting grad school, a little bit before this, so about 5 or so years ago. I was in community with a group of peers who were, like me, very curious about like faith and religious life, but like not exactly called to religious life, but we wanted to be in community together. And we were all very justice oriented, with a range of faith backgrounds. But we were really drawn towards the Catholic tradition and specifically to Catholic sisters. So we were hanging around with a lot of Catholic sisters, started learning methods of discernment, started seeing how they discern their own ministries, which is through a lot of time, a lot of conversation, a lot of prayer. Um, and with this community of friends, we really felt called to do something in the world, but we didn't know exactly what that was. So we just like stayed together, stayed in conversation for maybe about 2 years, just thinking like, what are, what is the issue that we feel really called to address, that we want to work around. And eventually we landed on land justice, which has roots in climate justice as well. So we started looking at the role of faith communities with their land and property, um, in reconciling histories of harm, from indigenous communities specifically, but also seeing how lands and resources can be utilized to restore ecological healing and racial healing. And that to me, really, that process of like just being with a group of friends and thinking and looking, well, it was like in sort of like that judge model, just looking around and sort of seeing, taking stock of what's happening in the world and sort of seeing where like our pain points were and where we felt most drawn to take action. We eventually landed on this spot. And I've just sort of, I've noticed myself how that has just sort of stayed. I still feel like there's, such a this is just such a compounding crisis. Um, Care creation is part of our Catholic social teaching, and there's like like a lineage that we can go back on and we can like draw from that I feel really inspired by. And there's for me, I found um, a process of being with and like a discernment that uh, feels really sacred to be doing in community and really powerful done to like go out and act on it. So by like discernment in community, like continual um, discernment just in my own prayer life and just thinking through like career and vocation and community and place, um, I found that there's still such a draw for me to address this issue. And there still continues, unfortunately, to be such a need. Um, um, I think folks are really are either feeling like in despair around this issue. Like I think most folks that I meet are either like really knowledgeable and just feel a lot of despair and are just like, I don't really know what to do. Like I'm hanging on by like a thread. And then there are folks who are sort of like tuned out to the issue. They're like, they know it's there, and they don't necessarily want to engage because it's so heavy. And there are so many other heavy things that are happening in the world that it can be feel really tough to like delve into other heavy things. Um, and I think the way through is uh, in being people of faith, sort of to like go back to where we started. Because I think ultimately having an orientation of hope and faith is how we'll move through this because we can't do this alone. We have to be in community with one another. And so being people that can like support one another through in order to allow for the creativity to think through solutions to this problem, and to be able to like create the stamina to address this issue in our local communities through advocacy efforts, through organizing efforts within, our universities, our schools, our workplaces, etc. That will be like those incremental changes will move things forward in a way that I think will be really will allow for things to change and for us to really address this crisis.
Hmm. And I really love how that, that illustrates and demonstrates how significant this process can be in all areas of your life, right? You encountered a similar process of coming together in community, identifying a situation, discerning how you're going to act toward it, right? In an area of your life that then has led you to continue this kind of community involvement and work on issues that are important to you. So this experience, it seems like, is the way you were describing it, kind of small s sacramental, right? And that it's this opportunity to bring some of God's presence into the world through our communion together, and working with one another towards this kind of commonly discerned objective. So I think it's an excellent opportunity that a number in our community are going to be looking to take advantage of. And I think you had something that you wanted to share on that note regarding places that Catholic Climate Covenant is offering.
Yeah. So Catholic Climate Covenant, we're really excited to be able to offer 3 spots to the program for anybody who might otherwise not be able to attend because of financial reasons. So we just want folks to be able to join, especially if this is something that they feel like they might not join because of financial reasons. So know that that's available. I'm excited for the group of folks who will come together. I think, these these opportunities to be in conversation, I see them as like faith sharing spaces. I see them as like learning spaces. I see them as like community building spaces. Granted, we're going to have a lot of material to go through. So It'll be a mix. Like it's not going to be just a purely uh, faith sharing space, but it is going to be a space of connection and prayerful community. That's the goal. I think I think our being able, our faith allows us and creating spaces like this where we're able to talk about issues in a faith setting allows us for like a deeper, it opens us up for a deeper type of conversation. So I'm excited to be able to offer that opportunity, and definitely want folks to be able to join if they otherwise wouldn't have been able to because of financial reasons.
Absolutely. I mean, that decision, as well as a number of others in the curriculum development, indicate that we're trying to put together something that's as accessible as possible for people, right? Both financially, but also in terms of what they're going to be engaging in the curriculum material. Some of the science you spoke of, it's very introductory, but also empowering, right? That's kind of the objective of the session, is to encourage people to adopt and practice these tools that will lead to a lot of positive impact in their personal life and how they experience the world, but also in how they engage their community and direct it towards a common good. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity. I'd encourage anyone in our audience to please consider joining the cohort. WholeMakers is a wonderful program, and as I'm sure Diana will share with you, it's a very meaningful experience for an individual's spiritual life. So, Diana, given that you're leading this series, this offering, is there a especially important message that you would hope participants take away from the end of the experience or out of the experience?
Yeah, I wanted to share with you all the like reason behind the name WholeMakers. This was actually pulled from a quote by the theologian and professor Ilia Delio. She wrote, "To follow Jesus is to be a whole maker, essentially to love the world into new being and life." And so I think the hope is that we together become WholeMakers, right? Become follow Jesus in such a way that allows us to create new life and new ways of being that inspire hope, that sort of move us through that like resurrection cycle that is core to our tradition, so that there's a sense of possibility, of newness, and know that we're taking the climate lens and addressing the climate crisis, and it is representative, or it can be sort of looked at in a broader scope as well. Yes, we're addressing this crisis, but we're also thinking, how do we be the type of person who can address these issues faithfully, in community, sort of grounded in awareness. And so, yeah, the goal is to be WholeMakers.
Oh, thank you, Dana. Thanks for taking the time this afternoon for us. Appreciate it.
I'm so grateful. Thank you again, Antonio and all.
For those listening, don't miss your chance to be part of this amazing series. This series will be online over Zoom November 6th, 13th, and 20th at 7 p.m. each day. All times are in Central Time, and registration is only $30. But space is limited, so be sure to sign up soon. You can register and find more details at www.ost.edu or visit our Eventbrite page. Thank you as always for tuning in. Stay bold, faithful, and please leave nothing undared for the gospel. See you next time, and may God bless you.